Hello and welcome back to 1874. Today it's a show all about Emi Martinez, the way back. How does he reintegrate himself at Aston Villa Football Club? So I recorded a segment earlier with Omar going over what we kind of think he needs to do, what could possibly happen, all that jazz. But then Jacob Tanswell, sneaky articles boy Jacob Tanswell, decided that he was going to throw a spanner in the works before that content came out. So I've grabbed him to do 5 to 10 minutes on Emi Martinez before you see what Omar and I spoke about earlier. So, Jacob, give us the latest. You've obviously just published something on The Athletic about Emi Martinez.
Yeah, so obviously going into an international break, it was a good time for there to be some respite, I guess, and for all parties really to clear their heads and allow water to go under the bridge. We've put in our article that there is an expectation, although tentative, from all sides, so Emiliano Martinez's camp and Aston Villa, that he returns back after the international break and is available for selection. Of course, there's been all this speculation about Manchester United, about potential move to Saudi, to Galatasaray, these clubs, but as it stands, there's expectation he reintegrates into the Aston Villa squad until at least January, where maybe his future will be revisited then. Of course, what I'm saying now can change really depending on Martinez's behaviour. If he comes back and decides that he really wants to push and really does want to stay here, of course that will change. But right now, as I'm talking to you, Dan, on Friday, the expectation is from his camp and from Aston Villa that the plan is for him to be back available for selection once he returns and rocks up back in the Midlands.
Did you ever expect anything different? Because he'd be silly now to kind of cast himself aside and kick off and make a fuss. He's almost got to come back with his tail between his legs and just try and reintegrate himself as best he can.
He does, but like a character like him, he can be unpredictable, right? Only on last Friday, Unai Emery was saying they didn't expect any of his big players to leave, and he very rarely says that, so he must have been confident. And then, give it a day, Martinez has not turned up to training, and he's not been part of the Crystal Palace matchday plans. So things can change in an instant with him. But I'd always expected him to have to come back, because there's no way in a World Cup year that he wouldn't be playing football. So what Emery decides to do, because it's going to have to come back and ultimately down to him at the end of the day in terms of, does he want to reintroduce Emi Martinez straight away, or does he want to phase him back in, maybe keep with Marco Bizot for a little while? And at the same time, he needs to have this clarity over his future. He does want to be asked by journalists every week what's happening with Emi Martinez. So there needs to be clarity either way, and it needs to be nipped in the bud straight away, because the longer it goes, right, Dan, it's the mood at Villa, albeit with deadline day signings, is still fairly low after a really poor start to the season. It can't linger and can't fester this issue. So hopefully something can change, and hopefully there can be clarity straight after the international break. And my piece today was about having that clarity. There is a feeling that with Villa and with his count, that things can recontinue and be reintegrated.
What's your first question going to be to Unai Emery when you see him next week?
Well, I like to think the broadcast section, obviously Sky Sports, PLP, local radio, will ask about that. If they don't, then of course I'll react and say, Emi Martinez, what's the latest? And also, are you upset? Are you disappointed with his behaviour? Of course, there's other questions to ask about Sancho and Harvey Elliott. It's going to be quite a busy, and I'm sure quite packed press conference, but there has to be questions asked, right? Especially after Emery's words after the Palace defeat, where he said that Martinez's behaviour hasn't helped anyone. So you'd like to think there'll be some reconciliation of some sorts.
Just, obviously don't dwell on this because I've already done 25, 30 minutes on it already today. But from speaking to the people that you've spoken to on both sides, is there a feeling whether he'll come out and say anything, maybe at the end of the international break or after his last game in the international break? Do you expect him to say anything?
I'm not sure. I'm not aware of there being anything. Maybe he keeps it quite low key and just comes back. Maybe that's what Villa like. But again, he's still over with Argentina, so he's out of Villa's control in terms of what they can, allow and sift through to the media. He can do an interview after the next game against Ecuador, for example. So I don't know what will happen. I don't know what he will do. I imagine he will try and want to get the fans back inside if he runs towards the whole end before kickoff. I don't know what that will entail.
No.
But again, I've seen rumours and things like that coming out on social media of Martinez never wanting to leave. So maybe that can be his strategy to deny everything. I don't know, but I like to think that hopefully he can be mature and everyone around and everyone involved can be mature and just say, listen, you're still one of the best goalkeepers in the world when you're at your best. Let's get back to that until January at least.
I mean, your story was pretty clear cut that he did want to leave. He was interested in going to Manchester United. So I'm not sure how he's gonna get round that. And his brother's come out and said some stuff today. I actually can't remember what he said, and I did read the quotes as well. But his brother's been speaking to radio in Argentina. I don't know whether you've seen that.
Yeah, he compared Emi Martinez to Diego Maradona.
That
right?
was it. Yeah.
I think, of course, when quotes are translated, they can always be taken out of context.
But
at the same time, he's saying that Emi Martinez's impact's similar to Diego at Napoli and Messi at Barcelona and Aguero at Man City. So of course he doesn't lack confidence either. What I would say is all these quotes coming from people close to him, people Scaloni, for example, who admitted, for all those people that don't believe it, admitted that he wanted to go to Manchester United and it couldn't happen. I do think we just need to see Emi Martinez focus on football now, right? That's the important thing, and because he's not been at his best for a little while now. So as long as he gets back to his best, Villa will have a good chance of climbing up that table.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jacob, for popping on and giving us the latest. I'll now hand you over to the earlier talk that I had with Omar around Emi Martinez's future and how he builds bridges and gets himself reintegrated at Aston Villa. You're back. For 2 years we've worked out it's been since you've been on the channel. You've got a historic mic head, I don't know what else to call it, there as well. Is it good to be back?
Yeah. I when you sent the message yesterday, I had a bit of a panic because I didn't know where my mic was or my camera. I found it in the end, dusted off the Villa View microphone cover, and I'm back. Yeah, I'm a bit rusty. Obviously, a bit more professional these days.
You'll be fine.
So I'm a bit nervous, but yeah, I'll be fine.
I mean, you're coming off actually, I did you a favour because I did a video with Flex in between, but we're coming off the back of one of our most successful pieces of content ever. Jacob Tanswell's review of the transfer window has gone down a storm, and his article obviously on The Athletic was very, very good as well. But I did put Flex in between to kind of take the pressure off you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because a hard act to follow, Jacob. He's star of the show, isn't he? Really, he's been fantastic, and really the content over the summer's been brilliant. I know it's been a tough one for you guys to get stuff out because it's been a lot of things in the air and rumours and things, but not a lot happening in terms of incomings. Lots of rumours, but I think the discussions, and I think for football fans as well these days, it's so much off the field, so important now compared to what it was back in the day when we all were obviously growing up and watching football. It's an important factor now, and it's not an ideal situation, but interesting summer nonetheless. And that pod especially I really enjoyed, and the article was fantastic.
Yeah, to be honest, I enjoyed the pod as well. Yeah. It was not really about my opinions. It was all about what Jacob had to say. You mentioned difficult summer and all the things we've had to deal with in the summer. Going to be interesting when this international break's over. I think it's a good time for the international break for Villa. I think it lets the dust settle on a few things. It lets people calm down over a few situations. But Emi Martinez played last night for Argentina. They won 3-0 against Venezuela. I think it was not much for Emi to do, but the first time we've kind of seen him back in the limelight post-transfer window. It's going to be difficult when he comes back. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I've got some feelings around it. I'm sure you have too. First thing I wanted to say to you is that we shouldn't really get, and people are saying I'm changing tacks now, and I don't think I am. But I don't think we should get this twisted that Emi Martinez did what Alexander Isak did in the summer, or what Johan Visser did in the summer. He's done things that we as fans won't like. He's done things that I'm not keen on this summer. But also, I do think there is a road back, because I don't think it was to the extremities of maybe what some other footballers have done this summer to their teams.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the international break came at a good time for him and for the club and for the fans, both in terms of what's gone on at the beginning of the season in terms of results and on the field performances, but also the transfer window. And I think it gives people time to cool down. It's a bit like, social media reactions and just general reactions after a match when you lose a game compared to a reaction the day after or a couple of days after. It's the same kind of premise, really, when you're thinking about what's gone on off the field, what's happened. I think if we were playing the next day, for example, and he was playing, it would have been chaos. Whereas now, I think 2 weeks off, people have a chance to relax and be calm and think about it. I think people will be slightly different. And I think, you've got to be, there's part of you is emotional, obviously, as a football fan, but part of you's got to be a bit logical and think Emi Martinez is still going to be here. He's not going to go. He's not going to go to Saudi Arabia. He's not going to go to Turkey. He's still going to be here. He's still our number one keeper. He's still a fantastic keeper. And what's the most important thing? It's, the club and how the club does on the pitch, because, we haven't had a good start. And what's the best way we're going to perform and do well this season? It's going to be with Emi Martinez in goal, realistically. And I do think your point about Isak and Wissa, it is different. Emi Martinez does love this club. I think his relationship with Aston Villa compared to Isak and Wissa's relationship with, Newcastle and Brentford respectively is quite different. But I do think he's lost his sort of legend status or potential legend status now. And I think that will be hard to get back. But I think in terms of getting the fan base back on side, end of the day, he performs well, Villa do well, then all that goes by the wayside and fans get back on side. And we are a fickle bunch. That is football. If you look at historically what's happened, Gareth Barry did a news interview. I think it was News of the World.
Barry actually did worse, didn't he? I think
he did way worse. Yeah. He came out critical of Martin O'Neill, said he wanted to leave. He wasn't allowed to leave, said he had done everything he could at Villa and he has to go. And the Villa was stopping him going. And that was he was a captain, I think, at the time, wasn't he? And that was out in public, and he had a road back and he came back and then he did a follow-up interview and he said, goodbye to Villa. I think it was the Birmingham Mail. He did that. John Duran, yes, he didn't sort of outwardly say he wanted to leave, but he did the hammer sign and all that kind of stuff. And the agent was sort of twerking as it were in the media. I think with Emi, though, I think it's a lot based on what's happening behind the scenes. We don't actually know, but it does look like he's angled for a move. Emery wasn't happy with him. He wasn't focused, and that's on him at the end of the day. And I think he has to. He can't ignore it. I think he has to say something. He has to apologise and has to get back on side. I don't know. I don't know what you think. I don't know how he'll react on the pitch or what he'll do. Whether he'll do anything. Obviously, he's put that random social media post up with a picture of him going on international duty. But I don't know if he does anything. But I think he should.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've got 2 away games when we come back. I don't know whether that's a good thing for him or not. I was trying to work out, like, at the start of a game, when he comes running towards the Holt end and he's giving it the fists, is what he usually does. Obviously, we've got 2 away games first, but then I think actually the away fans is the more hardcore. Like, that'd actually probably be a better gauge of how match-going fans feel, because it's more intimate. There's less of them. But when he runs towards an away end at Everton, I don't actually know where the away end is in the new ground. I think he probably will have to face them. So it'd be interesting to see how he reacts. Does he do that still? Like, does he do his normal routine as he runs towards the Villa fans? How do the Villa fans react to him when he's running there? I don't think he's going to come out and say anything.
Yeah,
unless he does it whilst he's on international duty, there isn't going to be club media set up doing an interview explaining the transfer window, and there shouldn't be, really. That's not going to happen. I don't think he's going to go to another outlet and do an interview. I think it's going to be some random South American journalist catches him after then I think they've got one more game, catches him after the game before he comes back, and he'll say something, I would think. But I don't think there's going to be a sit-down apology that maybe some fans want. And maybe in some ways that will affect the reaction if there isn't one of those, but I don't think there is going to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'd say I'd like an apology. I'd like something, but he's that kind of character. He's a very strong guy, isn't he, mentally? As we've seen in Villa and at Argentina, he will just get on with it. And if anything, he'll probably love it. He'll probably love the uproar, the controversy, and people doubting him and, lambasting him in the media and things like that. He'll just use it as fire to make, play better and better performances. I do wonder whether he'll start, though, or do wonder whether he'll go straight back in the starting lineup, or whether Rizzo will play and Emi will have to work his way back in. I don't know about that, but
I think maybe if he'd have kept a clean sheet against Palace or something, but the fact we've lost 3-0, it's clear who the number one is. I think that's the other important thing, and I've referenced this before, is that Emery obviously will speak to the media before the game, and he's going to have to address it. He's the kind of customer-facing face of Aston Villa. He's going to have to talk about it. Villa fans probably should be guided by Unai Emery's reaction. I would say I'll be guided by what I'm never going to boo him anyway because he's playing for Villa. I'm never going to give him any abuse because he'll have a Villa shirt on. But Villa fans should almost be guided by Unai Emery. In my opinion, I'm sure what Unai Emery thinks in private will be different to what he says in public. But I also think it's important, in my opinion, that Villa fans kind of go with what Unai Emery says and how he addresses it.
Yeah, and Emery's obviously a clever operator as well. He knows both in terms of obviously tactics and things like that we've seen, but also mentality and the psychological side of football. He understands it well. So, I know that those two haven't had the best of relationships from the beginning, but Emery knows that Martinez is an important factor for us to do well this season. So, it wouldn't surprise me if Emery, uses the media to get fans back on side and just says, look, Emi Martinez is an important part of the team. He's focused. He's back on it. We've had a discussion. I'm happy with him, etc., etc. And I do genuinely think he does love the club, but whatever's gone on.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I do think he loves the club, and I think he appreciates the club, but. At the end of the day, he doesn't love the club like we love the club.
No.
You look at what happened with Jack, and obviously, now he's at Everton and we're going to play against him, and I'd be interested to see what the fan reaction is with him as well. But even though he was a Villa fan, when you're a professional footballer, the relationship with the club is different as if you're a fan, in terms of your relationship with the club. You'll do anything for your club. It is the be all and end all, but they're professionals and this is their job, even if they're a fan of the club. They also have agents in their ears. They have, the future to think about. They got the family to think about in terms of pay rises and all that. And Emi's career is sort of not coming to a halt at all, but he's in his peak, probably falling off the peak now, really. And he's got to think about his last big contract, and it's probably what was in his mind in terms of going to the next club and thinking about maybe trying to win a trophy. And if the rumours are true, he was thinking of back in January. Is when he was thinking about moving. Then he's probably saw Villa haven't done well at the start of the season. He's probably thinking, well, we're not going to win anything. It's not happening for us. Maybe it's time to move. And I've done everything I can do here. Maybe that was going through his head. I don't know. But maybe he had, he's got. I think he changed agents, didn't he?
Yeah.
So maybe that was in his head as well, and people were in his ear. So I don't know. It's a difficult one. I do think he does love the club, but he loves the club in a different way to where we love the club. It is everything to us. For him, it is. His favourite club, and it's important to him, but his family comes first, his career comes first. It's different than how we think about it.
It's difficult, isn't it? You've spoke about Jack there. I think this is one of the main problems he's got. I think it's worse, this kind of thing, when you're universally loved, when the fans worship you. Me and you live in houses where Emi Martinez is a hero to kids, and they'll forgive and forget, of course, because they're kids. They're not going to understand it. They're not going to know enough about it. But the more tribal Villa fans, adults, they're going to struggle to see past it. They'll see it as it's an act of disrespect that he wanted to go to Manchester United, especially when they're so poor at the moment. I think if Manchester United were the Manchester United that Dwight Yorke or Mark Bosnich went to, even then there would still be a bad reaction. But you could almost see in your head, okay, I get that. He's going to go and work for Sir Alex Ferguson. He's probably going to try and win the Champions League. No, I think the bit that hurts Villa fans the most is that you're trying to go somewhere to a club that's worse than Villa. I don't think they'll finish ahead of Villa this season, despite our poor start. I think we'll sort ourselves out and get ourselves up the table. But I think that's why it feels a little bit more of a betrayal to some fans. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about. As you say, I have a little bit of sympathy for him, because I do think it was quite clear this summer that Villa were open to listening to offers to players, and Villa, if you read Jacob's article, have almost told Jacob Ramsey, you have to go. We need you to go. Then you can't, I feel sometimes you can't have it both ways. If that's happening to one player, you can't then complain that, another player kind of wants to leave. He hasn't gone the best way about it. The last 48 hours of the transfer window was a nightmare. I think there's been problems behind the scenes with him allegedly for a couple of months. Again, you read Jacob's article and listen to Jacob, that's quite clear. I heard, again, allegedly, that there was a falling out after a big game last season. Martinez and Emery, I don't think their relationship is as good as it was, and I think there's probably always been an element of friction there, going back to the time at Arsenal. But I think his performances always kind of outweighed everything else. His performances didn't outweigh everything else last season. He said himself it wasn't a good season. But on the positive, like you said, I do think this could lead to an uprise in performances from him. I do think it's almost like he's one of those players that needs some motivation. He needs that kind of inner angst or something getting at him to get the best out of him. And I actually think if Villa fans do give him stick, it might work in a good way for us inadvertently.
Yeah, I think you're completely right, and that's what's been going through my head. I think perception is so important in football, and I think for him as well personally, for him to be doubted is what drives him. That's what we've seen in his career so far. And he was doubted at the beginning. I think when Emery first came in, Emery wasn't sure on him, and I think he knew that, and I think that drove him. I do wonder, like, if he had gone at the beginning of the transfer window. And I think the club would have been not happy to let him go, but would have been quite content to let him go, because I think they
saw our replacement as well.
Saw a replacement. They could have got Chevalier or whoever it was. They would have had time to sort it out. But I think the way that it went down, the fact it was the end of the window, and Man United knew what they were doing as well. Let's be honest about this. They knew what they were doing.
I don't know whether they do know what they're doing, mate.
No. I mean, not in terms of strategy or anything like that.
Even with him,
the fact they came in at the end of the window, they were trying to just, rattle a rival. And they probably, to be honest, they thought if they leave it later in the window, they might be able to get him much cheaper. Maybe that's what they was thinking. Or maybe Amorim wanted him and the higher ups didn't want him, or the other way around.
I think it's a lack of joined up thinking at Manchester United that Amorim is clearly talking to Martinez and saying, I want you, you're going to come, you're going to be a real leader here. Manchester United are thinking, we're going to buy that younger goalkeeper because he's got resale value, he's cheaper, he's not going to cost us as much. So I think it shows a lack of joined up thinking at Manchester United again, which again leads Villa fans to probably be annoyed. They never made an offer. So he was never going there. And football changes so fast as well, doesn't it? Like at the start of the window, I know that he probably thought he was going to La Liga and thought he was going to Atletico Madrid. Then that changed, and Manchester United expressing interest. His agent is obviously in his ear. There's too many people involved as well. I don't think Romano's covered himself in glory with all this either. So it just ends up being a turbulent, complete mess. And it was just all come to a head on the end of the window. We've got a game. He doesn't play. Everything just turns into a big mess. And even that makes it all worse.
Yeah, I think this window was the craziest window we've ever had, but also the worst window in a way, because
I've hated it.
Because of the way the like the people at Romano have behaved, agents have behaved, players have behaved, just the feeling of the window. I think it's been, and from a Villa perspective especially, it's been horrible. I know a lot's happened off the field and a lot of signings and things like that, but I think the big six, as it were, have spent loads and loads of money, and the rest of the clubs have suffered, and Villa less so, really, if you think about it. Ramsey, was probably a player at the beginning of the season. We probably would have, if it was one player that we had to sacrifice, it was probably him.
Yeah, I thought that would be what would happen at the start.
My only issue with Emi was, I think he's had, as was mentioned, I think he's had a drop off. If you look at the season we finished Champions League places, top four, he was, for every metric you look at in terms of, saves, goals against, goals conceded, XG, OT, whatever it's called, all those kind of metrics, you think he's top 5, top 3 for pretty much everything. Whereas last season, he wasn't even in the top 10 for anything. I think there was a big drop off. But then again, you think, for Argentina, he's still getting clean sheets, he's still doing well. And I do think, yes, he had a drop off in form, but also that our defence had a drop off in form, apart from Luka Dean, really. The rest, and Tyrone Mings, but he couldn't play every week. So I do think that's a factor. But I do think maybe it would have been the right time to sell him, because I think he's on his way down, and we could have got a younger, younger replacement that could go on to be better. But it's a difficult one because his personality is so big. He's still a very good keeper, and on his day, he's still one of the best in the world. And also the fact that it would have made Man United better, I think, would have sorted a lot of their problems out if he had.
He would have helped them.
Even if it's for a year or two, it's going to get them back on side. So from that perspective, I'm not too gutted he hasn't gone. But I think, as you say, as we've said, I expect to see a better Emi Martinez this season because of this. And I think that's the kind of man he is. And I think that will help. It's difficult, it's not like Duran where you can score a goal and get fans back on side.
Yeah.
He can make a save, but that's not going to be the same thing. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. I think we, as Villa fans, we've got to be a bit pragmatic, I suppose, about these things. It's hard to be as a football fan, because you are emotional, and that is what a fan is about. But I think you ought to be a little bit pragmatic and say, okay, what's the best thing that can happen for Villa is Emi Martinez recovers his form, this drives him, and he helps us finish as high as we can on the table, or wins a trophy. And then he can leave, winning a trophy and achieve everything he can do at Villa. And that will probably be the best way to get his sort of legendary status back at the end of the day.
Yeah. The other elephant in the room is the last day of last season. Now, I don't think they're related, because I don't think he thought he was going to Manchester United at that point, as I've said earlier. But fans, again, some fans will look at it and think, well, he cost us Champions League on the last day of the season, which to an extent, I don't think he did. I think the performance cost us it, and we still could have won that game even with 10 men, and we were hopeless before he got sent off as well. And he actually made a couple of saves to stop us going 1 down. But again, people put 2 and 2 together and probably come up with 5. I think that impacts the reaction towards him as well. Would you agree?
End of the day, it was Matty Cash's pass that put him in that position. So, it wasn't like he engineered that situation. And I've seen Newcastle fans say the same about Isak, even though he scored, a penalty in the final or whatever it was. It's just, it's social media as fans, just make something out of nothing. And I don't think so. I don't think that would have been in his head at all. He's not that kind of player. He's not that kind of person. He's a professional. He wants to win. And why would he do that? It makes no sense to him, because he could still leave. Even if Villa got Champions League, he could still leave. It doesn't make a difference to him. So yeah,
makes it easier for him to leave in some respects.
Exactly, yeah, and puts Villa in a better footing as well. And at the end of the day, his wife's still got a business in the area. He'd want to leave on good terms. I think, and like I said, I do think he has an affinity to the club still. So, yeah, that's stupid, really. I do think, though, you're right. It does play on fans' mind, but fans will forget about that once you're back into playing. You're playing week in, week out. You're playing Sunday, Thursday. Results are happening. Other things are happening. These kind of things just go by the wayside. It's similar to with the off the field stuff that as I've said, as you've said on here, things that Villa have done wrong off the field. As soon as the matches start, people forget about it. As soon as you're winning games, certainly when you're not doing well, do these things come to the fore? If Villa continue to perform badly and struggle in the league, then this won't go away. This will be something for the fans to focus on. And rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying it's just the way the human psychology works. That's what will happen. But the best way, what Villa can do now, is just get back to winning and focus on that, and focus on the football. That's going to be the important thing. And I think with the new signings that we've got,
yeah, it helps.
I think and I think Elliott especially. I think that's the big one, because I think if we've got Sancho and Lindelof, yes, it would have helped the squad. But I think Elliott's a player we think actually that's a pretty good signing that I didn't expect Villa to make. And I think Villa fans are a bit more hopeful now, and I think that will help just the general mood of the club as well.
Yeah, important to say, we're not telling you how to feel here. We're talking about our own feelings and our own opinions. If people feel differently, that's absolutely fine. Let us know in the comments how you do feel about it. But Omar, in conclusion, is there a way back for Emi in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. I think there definitely is. I think Villa fans, want Villa to do well at the end of the day. If that means Emi is part of that, then he's part of that. I think January, where we are in January, will have a big impact in terms of where we are in the position as a club in the league, in cups, etc. If we're doing well, then I think I expect him to continue till the summer, and it just to fall by the wayside, and you just get on with it, and that's it. It's done. I think if we're struggling, then I think the rumours will circulate again, and it'll be a bit more chaotic that window as well.
I think he's stuck here for the season, I would say. I can't see any movement in January unless a team was to get a bad injury. Manchester United have got, for me, it tells you everything that's wrong with football. Manchester United have got 4 goalkeepers, 4 senior goalkeepers. They're probably paying somewhere towards £400,000 to £500,000 a week on wages to those 4 goalkeepers. I would guess. So just tells you everything that's wrong with football. That's okay, but we can't do anything, even though we've got owners that want to. in a pretty good, healthy financial situation because of the rules. We can't do anything, but that's probably a story for another day. Omar, thank you very much for joining me today. I tell you what, it's going to be interesting. First game against Everton, he could do without making a mistake in that first game back. I think if he has a good game and makes 3 or 4 good saves and we win, it's good for him, obviously. If we lose and he makes a mistake or doesn't give a clean sheet, it's going to could be the night.
I do think the fans will be with Jack. I've got
same as they were against Man
City.
Do
you reckon? I think there's been a bit of a shift on him.
Do you reckon?
I think so.
I can't see. I also think he'll probably have a very good game against us playing for Everton because he's obviously started very well.
Everton and Sunderland next 2. I think
they're not too. I looked at our first 8 fixtures at the start and thought, that's a nice 8 games. But because we've got off to a bad start now, I now look at the next 2 away from home and think, if we have 1 down in any of those games, are we going to come back? A bit like the Brentford game. I don't think 2 aways is ideal for us. And back to
be honest, I never look at fixtures because I always think circumstance is so important. Like you might have on the face of it, like Everton Sunderland, you think, 2 teams are going to struggle. You do well, but then they're off to a flyer, or you play Man United at home and you think, that's going to be tough, but then they get 5 injuries before the game.
It was always tough for us.
Yeah, true.
That doesn't matter. Bad example,
but you get it.
I know the point you're making. Well, Omar, it's been brilliant to have you back on the channel. Of course, we'll have you more through the season. Just feel free to keep using that mic head as well. Bit of nostalgia there for those watching via YouTube. And if you have watched via YouTube, don't forget to check out Match Bingo. Please subscribe with your post notifications on. Leave us a comment with how you're feeling about Emi Martinez and give us a like as well. If you have listened via audio, Spotify or Apple, then leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars preferably. If you think we're worth 5 stars, that would be great. Spotify, leave us a comment and leave us a review as well in terms of stars if you would be so kind. Not sure on content, but there'll be content coming up over the next few days because there always is now. That's what we do here on 1874. So if you've got your post notifications on and you follow us on socials or follow me on socials, then you'll know when the content is coming up or when it's out. All that's left to say really is have a great Villa-free weekend. Obviously England playing at Villa Park, so have a nice time if you're going to that. Thank you to Omar again. So up the Villa from me and an up the Villa from Omar.
Up the Villa.